Hello, everybody, and welcome to Greet the Week. This is Jan Moray, and I'm with my co-host, Mona Duncan.
Hello.
Our regular visitors is here today as well. And today, Mona's going to start our discussion on talking about what is the truth. So how do we know about the truth?
Right. How do we know what is truth anyway? It's still on some of the Wee TV and some of the old, laugh-in years ago. There was Ruth Busby, and she was Edith Ann. And she would sit in, they had made this enormous rocking chair, and she would be dressed up like a little girl, and she would sit in that big old rocking chair and rock back and forth, and she would tell the most outlandish story that you had ever heard. And then she would always end up with, and she'd point that finger, you better believe me, she'd always end up with, and that is the absolute truth. And of course, you knew that it was absolutely as outlandish as could be. And so I'm wondering, is truth really a thing that's on the way? So I looked up and went into the dictionary, the college dictionary, and what is truth? Well, truth is something that conforms with facts. It is reality. It is a proven principle. It is verifiable. It is law. It actually exists, and it agrees with standards. But even within that, there's a lot of leeway. Or it seems to be a lot of leeway until you measure against something that's absolutely plumb. In carpentry, they have a plumb line. Right. And if it doesn't match that plumb line, then it's askew. And so I was reading an article in the most current Reader's Digest, and it was about a lady, Hannah Arendt, Adrendt, and she talked about the fact, as she has coined a term she coined a term called frozen thoughts. And she was saying that we get so ingrained in our way of thinking that when we hear, okay, Kitty, you can get down now. We get so ingrained in our way of thinking that when we hear anything different from what our ingrained thinking is, we have a tendency to automatically discount it.
Right.
And we get so in with our own thinking that it can very easily get us to the point that we can be deceived and become more neo-Nazi Germany of years ago. And then she also likened it to like doctors that have been doctors for years and years, and they have this tried and true method, and when they get a symptom and something, they automatically know what it is. And as opposed to someone that is more open to look at new thoughts and not have our thoughts be frozen, to see how something may be a little different than what we had preconceived.
Yeah.
And so I thought today we would talk about that.
Okay. All right.
And did you have a comment there whenever I talked about frozen thoughts?
Well, I was thinking about the topic from last week where you're talking about habits and our lazy brain.
Right.
We're talking about the doctors that have a lot of experience, and they go to what they're familiar with.
Exactly.
And a lot of times they don't take in new information, new research that's been done, and because they're so habitual for them to go to what they've always looked at. But to try to take a look at things from a little different perspective, or this case is not as textbook as some of the other ones that I've had, and maybe you need to step back and say, okay, let me think a little bit instead of just jumping to what first comes to mind.
Right. And even sometimes we get in that because it seemed to work, it was effective.
Right.
And then we begin to think, well, this is it. I've got it. I've nailed it. And we can become, well, we just need to have our minds open. And so one of the ways to break those frozen thoughts or to overcome that is to be open to conflict.
Yeah.
To be open to it. I love what Jerry said there whenever he was talking about that they play the game and they want to win, but nobody gets mad because somebody else won. And so that's a wonderful way to unfreeze our brain when we look at, well, this is the way it is, and that we don't have to try to get everything back to what it was previously. And so how do we break those frozen brains? Well, it's about, being open to.
Yeah. And it's hard sometimes, especially when it's the new information comes out and it's things that you don't really want to hear. It doesn't really jive well with what your thoughts are. Then you really don't want to hear it and don't want to learn from it. And even though it may have been proven that what you thought was truth is not truth anymore, then you stick to that because you don't want to hear the other side.
Right.
Isn't frozen brain synonymous with narrow-mindedness?
I don't know. No, it doesn't have anything to do with, well, maybe. But it doesn't have anything to do with not being intelligent. Because very intelligent people can have frozen brains.
I'm not saying, I'm not talking intelligence here.
Right.
And frozen brain sounds to me almost exactly narrow-mindedness. You're not open to any new ideas.
Right.
Narrow instead of open.
Right, right. Of course, we don't want to be so open-minded that, all our brains fall out. And just accepting everything. So it's always to be within healthy boundaries, within borders.
Well, sure.
And to try it and evaluate it, rather than just drink in something, rather than just drink the Kool-Aid because, everybody else is, or to go with something just because of that.
Yeah.
But to look at and with, so I looked up, in the little blurb to this, I equated truth with law. There's the law of gravity. And within our atmosphere, that law of gravity applies to everyone. And so a truth that is a law will apply to everyone. And that may be one of the reasons why I love reality therapy so much, is the fact that looking at the basic needs that we have, they're applicable to everyone in the whole entire universe that ever has been born or ever will be born. That we all have those basic needs of surviving, sure, but we have that basic need of accomplishment, of power, of purpose, of, contributing to planet Earth. We have that basic need of having fun and enjoying. And that sometimes we get our frozen brain because this was fun, but then it quits being fun and it leads to addictions because we keep on keeping on, or it leads to violence, or it leads to so much anger and just anger.
Yeah.
I think when you say law, it's important to distinguish between natural law and human law.
Well,
natural law is truth, but human law, some are not so valid, or they shouldn't be taken. Some human laws are wrong.
Well, that's why I said the fact that whenever we get those frozen brains, we can become, neo-Nazis. We can become World War II all over again, because we realize the fact that there is a humanity to it. And usually that frozen brain is in keeping with having that emotional attachment to what we think is right, or what we think is law. And there are laws. I love Martin Luther King and his definition of a just law and an unjust law. An unjust law, a just law smooths the way and is good for everyone universally, or within that confine of whatever the law is. Whereas an unjust law is my way or my way. An unjust law is really no law at all, even though it is, obeyed by so many people because of fear, not because of improvement in life situations. So in the documentary with Mr. Rogers, y'all familiar with Mr. Rogers?
Mm-hmm.
Many years ago. And in there was a little boy that asked him a question. And he asked him a question. He asked, he says, what do I do with this mad that I feel? And the little boy, Mr. Rogers coined, just so in the documentary, he gave this poem. He said, what do you do with the mad that you feel? When you feel you're mad, when you feel so mad you could bite, when the whole world seems oh so wrong and nothing seems to be right. It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else and sing this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop anytime. Know that there's something deep inside that helps me become what we can. And so in the law that we may be thinking is unjust, it's realizing that because someone else believes it, or whatever it may be, whether it's within the individual household, or that, someone was talking about the fact that her daughter is getting married. A friend of mine was sharing with me that her daughter was getting married, and that someone was making some comment that was very, very narcissistic, and was making comments and was, just kind of laying down the law of what should be and shouldn't be and so forth. And so she just told him off. And she realized that she'd gotten a little more colorful and that there was more disregard of humanity and so forth in the process of doing that. That the fact that whatever it is that we get so very upset about, we realize that there's something deep inside of us that helps us become what we can become, which can be more gentle, more loving, more kind, more less, and have compassion toward those that see things differently than the way we do.
I think it's to be difficult when you are feeling that anger or feeling that hurt, because then you put the focus on you and you're not really paying attention to where the other person's coming from, or trying to understand why they said what they said. All you know is what you're feeling inside, your hurt and your anger and stuff. So it gets to be difficult to do that.
Yeah. But again, in the little blurb, I talked about the fact that, tragedies happen.
Yeah, they do.
And
absolutely.
There are tsunamis, and there are earthquakes, and there are fires, and there are horrible things that happen. But in the midst of that, there is a truth that humanity is still humanity, and it has so much worth and value. And rather than being thankful that someone's house burned or that something happened to someone, to just share that humanity, that law of commonality, that law of oneness, that we're more alike than we are different. That law of, and it is a universal law, that law of attraction. Many times in working with the prisoners, I would ask them, what are you telling me, that this law among thieves is that, there's a code of honor among thieves? And all they would all boo and hiss, no way, that's just something that's said, that there's not a code of law among thieves, that steal from any one of them, as much as from someone else. And sometimes we spout these things that as being a truth, but it really isn't. And it's as we begin to look at ourselves and see it was a tragedy. A lot of times we talk about that so many innocent people were killed. Well, none of us are innocent in reality. There's that law of the good and the bad. There's that law that what is in one is in all, as above, so below, as below, so above. That those opposites, that that all of that is within each and every one of us. All of the evil as well as all of the good.
Yeah,
And
but in a
sometimes we
tragedy,
promote.
something like an earthquake, like you mentioned, I mean, they're innocent in the respect of that they had nothing to do with the earthquake. They just happened to be there.
Well, they innocent in that maybe they're not a robber or rape or a maimer or, pillager or all that kind of stuff. Maybe innocent as that. But, I mean, one of the laws is the law of seasons. And sometimes seasons come a little bit earlier, a little bit hotter, a little bit colder, a little bit more frozen. But the seasons, they keep coming. And the seasons come in our life. And as we can see that and know that, and that those seasons always bring change.
Mm-hmm.
And that change.
So there you're talking about seasons of the year, or the seasons like of aging, where you're passing from one season being like a parent to being a grandparent, elderly, those kinds of seasons? Are you?
I'm talking about all of them.
All of okay.
Too inclusive, huh?
Okay. Well, you're just trying to understand the perspective here.
I kind of wonder, and I have been wondering for a while, about the relationship between truth and accuracy. Those two words, are they synonymous? Is there a difference between truth and accuracy? Are they just words that we use differently, but we mean the same thing? You could have various levels of accuracy and various levels of truth. And there's absolute truth, such as gravity exists in our atmosphere or on Earth. And you can have absolute accuracy, such as the plumb line that Mona was talking about. It's absolutely plumb, or it's off by 1/100th of a degree. What's the difference between accuracy and truth, or is there any difference at all?
Well,
truth can also be belief. I mean, it's your truth. It's just because you believe it is true, it's not necessarily somebody else's truth.
Yeah, but truth is reality, whether you believe it or not. The world was round, whether humanity thought it was flat for a long time. It was still round. That's true. Regardless of what anybody believes, that what somebody believes does not determine truth.
Well, except that if I believe that you aren't trustworthy, then that's my truth. And you may be a very trustworthy person, but I will treat you and act towards you as if you're not trustworthy, because that's my truth.
Well, I'm talking about objective truth, not subjective truth. Objective truth. Truth is reality, the way it really is, regardless of what anybody believes.
Yeah,
Truth is reality.
If you're talking about whether or not somebody's trustworthy, that's opinion.
Yeah, that's subjective.
Yeah. So here I'm going to share the screen for a minute. So here it is: opinion, belief, fact, truth, and our truth, or our reality.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's the difference in it? Well, an opinion, it can be founded. There can be some facts there, or it can be totally unfounded. Well, this is just what I think that will work. But there's no founding to it. The same thing with a belief. But a fact and truth, they're founded. There's something that you can go back to that has that plumb line. Well, our reality, the same thing. It can be founded or it can be unfounded. Also, down here on the second, here's the founded or the unfounded. Then down here, we look at the emotional and the logical. And you see, whenever we're going with opinions and beliefs, we can get real emotional because we're seeing it from our point of view. It's also, but a fact, it's logical and it's also neutral. It is logical in that if we knew all of the facts, I mean, there's no such thing as an accident, because all the elements were met for that to have happened. And if all of the elements had not been met, it wouldn't have happened. So it's logical. I don't like it maybe, and it's also neutral, meaning that it would have happened to me, it would have happened to you, it would have happened to anyone else had you been there when all those conditions were met. Whereas our reality is based upon the way we see it. And then also opinions down here they're limited and they're also subjective. Whereas a true fact and truth, whatever truth is unlimited, meaning it applies to everybody, not just to one, and it is also objective.
Yes. Would you do me a favor and email me that chart?
I will.
Thank you. No, that's exactly right. I agree with that. There's a difference between subjective and objective.
Definitely. And so back with the hurricanes or anything else, if my house was not harmed, were not destroyed, I may be okay with that, because, well, obviously that's going to meet with my emotional feelings of, what a wonderful person I am. and where yours, it may be that irrational opinion of, well, you deserve to have your house. See, the thing of it is that it's not personal. Truth is not personal.
Right. Yeah.
A fact is not personal. Now, the one that, and so as we can see those difficulties, so there is a tornado that comes, and my house is destroyed. It's there in shambles, and I'm all upset about it because it has become personal to me. But it was not personal from the tornado coming through the alley. And there's so many things that we look at that we take it personal when it was just an occurrence of natural elements.
Right.
And then sometimes we take things that other people say to us as being very personal when it isn't necessarily so. And back to the lady that was telling me that her this friend, whoever it was such a narcissist and was laying out plans for everyone and how that wedding was to be, and she kind of told him off. And she said that she later felt convicted, and she was sharing with a friend. Well, she was sharing with me. She was sharing that she had, what she had done and what she had said. And then she said, I wish I had thought soon enough to have said, that I will keep you in my prayers because you are so blah, 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 blah. And I didn't say this to her. I did not say this to her, but my thoughts were telling them right offhand, being so, giving them the riot act right up front as to what a narcissist you think he is not any more less if you precede it with something that comes and say, I'm presenting this away in self-righteousness, but here's the lowdown anyway. That it still caused harm.
Still not a nice thing to say.
It's rather self-serving.
Yeah.
Right. Even if I were to say, I'm wishing happy thoughts your way, or I'm going to pray for you that you will not be this arrogant, blah, 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 blah. It just comes across on self-righteousness from the one spouting that.
How magnanimous, really.
Yeah.
That saying, I'll pray for you. A lot of times when you hear it, it's when the person doesn't agree with what the other person is doing, and they're saying, I'm praying for you, meaning I'm hoping that one of these days you're going to realize the wrong that you're doing, the bad things that you're doing, and you're going to turn around, and that just doesn't feel good.
No, because it isn't. It's one self-righteous being self-righteous with the other self-righteous.
Right.
It makes me laugh though, because it is so human,
Yeah,
isn't it?
right. Yes.
This is what people do. It just cracks me
It
up.
is. It is so human. But as we begin to look at that, and back to what we've talked about a few weeks ago, we begin to clarify our feelings. Do I like me when I do things like that? And if I don't, then see it sooner, stop it quicker. And though I may be spouting truth, but if I'm spouting truth in a self-righteous way, no one's going to hear it.
No.
And it's going to cause more harm than good. And so sometimes it's just, and as far as praying for anyone, pray for yourself.
Yeah.
There's a song, it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's not my neighbor, it's not my mother, it's not my father, it's not my brothers, it's not my sisters, it's not, it's not that narcissistic cousin, it's me. I'm the one that needs
so going back to it being the truth, the woman who said that she wished she would have told her that she was going to pray for him. Isn't she praying for her truth? Because it's still her truth that she
exactly
that he was being narcissistic, but it was her truth that he was being wrong.
Right. And when you get really down to it, the real truth is that she was pretty narcissistic also.
That's right.
In reading the Riot Act and how to clean up the mess. And that's
truth, unless it can really be backed by facts and data, which emotions and beliefs aren't, but we believe. I mean, people believed the earth was flat forever and ever, and that was their true belief.
And not only that, the ones that had this insight and began to look at the scales and everything was killed.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
It was heresy because it was against the church.
Right.
It was against the church to say that the
Right.
earth is not the center of the universe.
Yeah. But, and it goes back to that narcissist that is the center of the universe.
Right.
And anytime we begin to see that, we begin to look down on others. And that's not ever, it doesn't ever draw people together. And the truth, I may have, is looking at the truth, that the truth is everything, thoughts become things. And we have to, everything is created twice, first in the thoughts and then in reality. And if we think negative, critical, then we become that way and we pass it on to others.
Mm-hmm.
And as we begin to change ourselves, and that's why I love but Mr. Rogers said, I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop any time. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. And even though it may be a regret, look at it and get honest with ourselves. Look at the truth about ourselves. And then we're in a position that we can begin to change something. And enough change little change leads to more change.
Yeah.
Whether that's in the negative and the shootings and the everything else, or whether it is in the kindness and the regard of our fellow human being.
Because it does affect those who are around you. If you're being angry and negative and violent, others around you are going to respond the same way. Or a lot of times, not 100%. But with kindness, if you treat people kindly and with respect, then a lot of times they will do the same to you. So it's creating the environment that you want. You have to start with you, and you're the first one who has to do it, and then you know to stay away from those people who are not who don't observe the same values as you do.
Yeah, and back to Dr. Glasser's reality therapy and choice theory. It's a theory, it's an opinion that we have this need to make our own choices, but we do.
Mm-hmm.
We do make our own choices. We have this gift of a free will. And we make our own choices, and that is a universal truth. The thing of it is all too many people don't see that because they're threatened or they're angry but the bottom line is we make our own choices. And we teach ourselves what it is we need to learn, but we have to kind of unfreeze that. We need to be open to conflict and push our own pause button before we react.
Really regret, right?
So that we can respond to rather than react to.
Right.
And take the emotion out of it so that it can be a true not in the heat of the moment, but in what is good for the whole, for all involved in every circumstance, in every situation.
Yeah, it's good if you can get into the practice of moving away in the heat of the moment, because we all know that the things we say and the things we do, a lot of times we'll later regret. So if there's a way that we can say, I got to step away from this for a little bit before, but we can continue this conversation later. This is important to me, and we'll continue this later, but now is just not the right time.
Yeah.
And speaking of time, I think we're done with our time for today. Any parting thoughts, Mona or anyone else?
Still waiting for the comparison between accuracy and truth.
Sure.
We can talk about that after you get off the air.
Well, something can be accurate and true. It kind of goes back to the opinion. Your opinion can be founded or unfounded.
I didn't know.
It has nothing to do with opinion. Nothing.
No. Accuracy, I think, has more just to do with the measurement. So if you take like a physical law, how closely whatever you're measuring accurately reflects that law, that's accurate. And if it's inaccurate, then it's not a good reflection of that physical law. But it's more, to me, it's more measurement.
Well, can truth be considered the same way? Can you measure truth?
No, because that's subjective.
No.
Right? I mean,
There's no way to measure.
that chart showed me.
Right.
Truth is subjective.
I'm talking objective truth. Objective, not subjective truth. Objective truth.
Well, that goes back to the seasons. I mean, the seasons, that is, there's a fact that there are seasons that come into our life. Again, whether it is spring, summer, fall, or winter, or whether it is a baby growing into an adult, growing into a grandma, those seasons are there, but they don't they don't match exact days for days, even though on the calendar it says this is the first day of fall, this is the first day of winter. It does not mean that all of the measurements are there, that the sun rises at that certain time every year, because there's a leeway there. But it's still a reality. It's still a truth that we have those, and that there are certain measurements that apply to it.
And it may be the semantics too. I understand what Jerry's saying, but even objective truth, I mean, what objective truth is there other than something like the sun comes up in the morning, right? Granted, where you are on the planet is going to be different, but when we start talking about people and how they interact, it's all subjective. Unless
It
you're actually observing something that's something physical, a natural law occurring, it's all objective because it's got people in it. And we all have our opinions.
Right.
But I kind of get hung up the same way when we say it's an objective reality. Well,
maybe so, maybe no.
Maybe it's no. When we start saying reality, which I understand what he's saying, I always looked at it the same way, but maybe that's not the best way to state it. Or an objective reality is really, here we go again, the truth.
Yeah.
The
pause. I'm going to pause right here because I'm going to stop the recording. So anybody
Okay.
who's listening now and wants to join in on our after discussions, please feel free to join us live every Monday at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. Bye-bye, and we'll see you next week.